Hello, everybody. It's your boy, the Punk Otaku Tribe, and welcome to another review of Batman Capes Crusader, episodes 4 through 6. Now, in the last video, I had mentioned that I felt like this was my favorite series of the year. And I meant that. I was already in love with the show in just 3 episodes. But I sort of felt like maybe it had reached its peak. Not in a bad way, not at all. Definitely in a good way. I felt like it had reached its peak of quality, and even though episode 3 tapered down a little bit, I thought, it has the potential in its writing to just keep on that trajectory. It's gonna remain as good as it is. And I was wrong, and everyone I spoke to that said the same thing was right. It did get better, and I didn't think that was possible. This is still cementing to be my favorite show of the year, and this was further evidenced in the writing for episode 4. So in episode 4, we open up on Gotham and the GCPD in chaos, in turmoil over the existence of the Batman. Whereas before, they didn't believe that he was real. Now they know that he is, and they're afraid of him. They don't trust him. They find him to be a menace. And because of this, Mayor Jessup has called on the GCPD to capture him, top priority. So Commissioner Gordon decides to devise a plan for this. He would plant fake crimes all around the city that they obviously thought that Batman would respond to. However, Batman either one sees that they're fake or takes care of the situations so swiftly that they have no idea what to do. He just takes care of it like that. He's in and out. They have no idea what to do. So that plan's a bust, right? And with this plan being a bust, the mayor is angry. Action needs to be taken. And Flash and Bullock decide, you know what? We need to get the job done. How about we make real crimes happen? And they decide to let go an already incarcerated prisoner. That would be Firefly. So, Flash and Bullock unleash Firefly upon the city, and they let him to his own devices and are ensured that chaos is going to ensue. He's a serial arsonist. If he gets a hold of his tools, everything is going to go up in flames, quite literally. Everything is just going to happen exactly as they want. The way this episode, this show in general, treated Firefly and has been treating its villains has been excellent. It's been stellar. This episode, though, shows Firefly in a light that I wasn't expecting. It actually has you have sympathy for him. It shows you that he's disturbed, for sure, but he's not evil. His mindset is more of like the mind of a child who just wants the world to experience the beauty of fire as he does. When he puts on his goggles for his suit, he sees the world just bathed in flames, buildings and people, but not in a horrifying way. They're just people made of fire. And he just wants the world to experience that beauty just as he does. The whole episode has this surreal and ethereal quality to it that sort of drives this point home that while Firefly is disturbed and doing heinous things, he's not someone that you should hate. He's someone that you should pity. And when you see what ultimately happens to him, that point really hits hard. I was so impressed with how they treated this character in this story. Now moving on to episode 5. I believe it was called In the Stress of Her Regard. This is the Harley Quinn episode. So while episode 4 was disturbing in sort of a sad, melancholic way, this episode is disturbing in a horror type of way. This episode definitely veers into horror. So, no secret to anyone that's already a Batman fan. Harley Quinzel is the persona of Harley Quinn, the Batman villain, right? So, as you're probably already aware, she becomes Harley Quinn in this episode, in this series. right? When I first heard of Harley Quinn, I followed the articles and trailers and things like that as the show was coming out, right? I wanted to cover it all, but I just didn't get a chance to. But anyway, they mentioned that she was going to be the inverse of what we're typically used to when it comes to Harley Quinn, where when she's out of the costume, out of the villain persona, she would be happy and jovial and really likable. But when she's in the costume, she'd be stoic and cold and kind of serious and scary. Seeing that in action, it's really, really scary, actually. I kind of feel like they undersold it. So we open up on the episode, and there's something happening to a man just as a clown that at first you would find funny in an uncomfortable way, right? It's kind of funny, but then when you kind of see the context of it, when the context of what's happening to him is revealed, it's really horrifying. And this whole episode has that going for it. This Harley Quinn is the most twisted the character has ever been. She is, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. She's torturing people, but she's torturing them in these really bizarre ways that only a character like Harley Quinn could. At least this Harley Quinn. Speaking of, I really appreciate that the character of Harley Quinn has come into her own lately, right? And I think this iteration has really cemented the character as being her own character, her own person, which that's already kind of been done, but even in those iterations lately where she's kind of broken out on her own before from the Joker, she's actually still seen as the Joker's girlfriend, right? Or now Poison Ivy's girlfriend. Here, she's just her own character. She's her own villain. She's got her own thing going on. And I mess with it, man. I really do. I think this might be my favorite version of the character ever. And I might be the most afraid of her of all the villains so far in this show. Maybe of all the iterations of all the characters, because she's super twisted. I would not want to run into this Harley Quinn in a back alley at all. But Harley Quinn aside, how's the episode? It's excellent, just like the rest of this show is. You know, Harley Quinn is probably the best part about it, but this story is so unnerving when you find out what Harley Quinn is doing. It's so unnerving, it's uncomfortable, and it really makes you feel for these people that she's doing these things to. They're awful people, so she's got that, oh, I'm doing this for the greater good thing going on, but you know, what she's doing is messed up and you can't justify it. But all in all, uncomfortable or not, it's a ride, man. And it's a ride I'm never going to forget. And I'm probably going to revisit. So now moving on to episode 6. This one really surprised me. Not only in the villain that they chose to spotlight in this episode, but also in how they portrayed him. This episode completely subverted my expectations. While it's a pretty standard episode in terms of like the beats of an episode like this would go, it's still really stellar, and the way they portrayed the story and the villain was amazing. The villain in question is Gentleman Ghost. I don't think I've seen Gentleman Ghost in Batman media since maybe that Brave and the Bold cartoon in Cartoon Network, if you remember that. I'm sure he's appeared in some comics recently, maybe even before that, but I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell you. But yeah, man, Gentleman Ghost, it was really cool to see him get the spotlight. That's actually another thing this show is doing so well, is that it's giving the spotlight to these villains that otherwise wouldn't. So this episode opens with Gentleman Ghost actually robbing somebody on the streets. And of course, this gets the attention of Bruce Wayne and Batman. And so Batman investigates. Now, I will admit that when I first saw Gentleman Ghost, I got excited. You know, I had a moment. You know, we've all had that when we see something that gets us really excited, whether it's nostalgia or not. You know, we've all had that moment, and that's how that's what I had with Gentleman Ghost seeing him. But considering the tone of this show and the atmosphere and everything, my initial thought was he's not really a ghost. That's not what they're gonna do, right? This show is, other than the mad scientist stuff with Clayface, this show is too grounded and too serious in tone to make him an actual ghost. He's like got a projector or something. He's not an actual ghost. He's a real person, right? I was wrong. Any other show like this would actually have done what they do with Gentleman Ghost in this, and then made you think that the twist was what I initially thought. No, he's not an actual ghost. No, they did a double switcheroo on us here. No, he's actually a ghost and actually robbing these people because he feels like he has unfinished business, that all this wealth that Gotham has belongs to him. And he's just a vengeful ghost. He's an actual specter. And it surprised me so much. And I don't know if that was intentional, if the writers of the show intended to do that, where they made you think that that's what they were going to do because of the tone that the show has already set. But I was genuinely surprised, and I actually felt kind of dumb for being surprised. It was like, of course they would do that. So this show was just too smart for me, I guess. But this was a really great episode and really dark. It has some horrifying imagery, like Gentleman Ghost being bathed in flames and the mask burns off of his face, and it's really cool stuff. There's also a really good scene during the final moments when Batman and Alfred are actually fighting Gentleman Ghost, when they find out how they can, where you see that Batman, Bruce, does care about Alfred. Now, I mentioned in the last video that I noticed that he calls him Pennyworth. He doesn't call him Alfred, and he still hasn't. He still hasn't called him Alfred. He still calls him Pennyworth. And I think in this scene in episode 6 in the graveyard, he calls him Old Man or like Old Fool, something like that. So he does care for Alfred, but it's almost like he's keeping him at a distance, right? Because something happens to Alfred in this scene, and it worries him. He becomes worried for Alfred. And it's obvious that he does care for Alfred on some level. But what that wall is, why it's there, don't really know yet. It's probably pretty obvious, you know. It's probably that he doesn't want to get too close to someone older than him, and an authority figure in his life, or someone that's older than him, because obviously what happened to his parents, which I don't remember being explored in anything Batman before. Typically, they're pretty close, and Bruce is stoic, but he sees Alfred as his fatherly figure, and then that's the end of it. No, it seems like they're doing a bit more with them here, and I'm really digging it. This is really good stuff that they're doing. And those are my thoughts on episodes 4 through 6 of Batman Caped Crusader. And I think it's somehow even more so my favorite show of the year than it was the last time I said it. I don't know how that's possible. But again, I thought it was impossible that it could get any better, and it is. And now I can only expect that it's going to get better. And, man, I'm so happy this show exists, man. I really am. But what are you thinking about it if you've been watching it lately? Are you planning on watching it at all? If you don't like the show, let me know. I'd like to get someone's perspective, of someone that doesn't really care for the show that much, because as you can see, I'm sold. I'm in love. I don't think this show can do any wrong. You know, I'm a fool following it around, and it can do no wrong by me, right? So let me know what you think. If you don't like it at all, I really would like to hear your perspective on it. Give me those thoughts. Give me that review down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.